Welcome back to another exciting episode of Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people where we talk about critical issues in the blindness community. I'm Aaron Richmond. Tonight, like all other episodes, is of course copywritten by me, Aaron Richmond, and Aaron's Opinion. Thank you. You guys can watch this episode right here on YouTube as you all enjoy doing, or you can even listen on Anchor or iTunes or wherever you get a podcast. Don't forget, you can even consider following me on Facebook, Twitter, even consider becoming a patron on my Patreon page. Aaron's Opinion 6 at gmail.com. 1240-681-9869 for contributions. Let's get right into this one. I am really excited and really pleased to be joined this evening by Rebecca Meadows, the CEO of Blue Butterfly Enterprises. She joins us now, and you have a very interesting story, a great story about overcoming things. I want you to, in this case, I want you to basically, if you want, start your story by talking to us kind of the perspective of your book that you have been working on, or that you wanted to present. Two books, one of which you talk a lot about your blindness journey and the challenges you've overcome successfully. So Rebecca, go ahead, you're on.
Okay, I've actually written two books. I published two books. I'm currently writing two other books that I've not yet published. But the two books I've published so far, the first one is called Because You're Blind, and the second one is called Changing My Perspective. Both of my books that I have out right now, I feel are very important. My first book is the story of how I overcame the struggle of waking up blind at the age of 12 years old, to find myself blind and brain injured, as well as paralyzed on the left side of my body. And it's about the struggle to overcome all of that with no help from my parents, for many years. And then when I was 20 years old, my parents dragged me to court and locked me down under a guardianship. So for 15 years, I languished under a guardianship. And I continued to be mistreated and misdiagnosed, and a lot of bad stuff happened. But I also did, during that same period of time, get some of the training that I had been refused by my parents, So I did finally get some of the training to help me recover from some of my injuries. But I finally escaped from that guardianship in January of 2012. And so from the time I woke up blind in 1989 at the age of 12 until the day I walked out of court in January of 2012, all of those years I had no free will. Do you understand?
Yes.
And so where a lot of people look at the blindness as the thing that devastated my life, the blindness really didn't devastate my life, because once I got a cane, which it was really crazy, because when they locked me down under that guardianship in 1997, even though my parents had refused to let me use a cane for years, that guardian actually stuck me in a place where they gave me a cane and taught me how to use it, right? So even though they took all my rights away from me, they gave me the training they had denied me for years. So all of a sudden, I could suddenly walk around and do things safely, right? And all of a sudden I was able to do things. I mean, I was learning how to do things, and yet I couldn't do anything because I had no rights. Do you understand how crazy that was?
Yes, I do.
And
um
that fight to overcome that guardianship that my parents locked me down under actually became the greater fight, more so than overcoming the blindness. And so the day I defeated the guardianship in January of 2012, from then on it was just a matter of going on with my life. But that's what my first book is about. And then my second book is about putting my life back together after I defeated that guardianship in January of 2012. And it's about how I put my life back together and how I started my company and how I changed my perspective. You know what I mean? Does that make
yes,
sense?
yes it does. Yes it does, Rebecca. Yes.
And Aaron, when I was a child at the age of 8 years old, my second grade teacher taught me to read really well. And it was at that age when I decided I wanted to be a teacher when I grew up. And then 4 years later, I was blinded by a traumatic brain injury. And everybody told me that my life was pretty much over, right? That I would never be able to have my own free will again, basically. So it was a long struggle to prove them all wrong and fight to get that my free will back. And now today through my YouTube channel, I feel like I am the teacher that God created me to be when I was a little girl, right?
Definitely.
So that is my message to the world, is basically that, you know, it doesn't really matter what the people who are around you are saying to you. They may look at you and see you as worthless or see you as somebody who can't achieve anything of value in their opinion, but that's not necessarily true. You just have to fight to find your own value and then learn how to share it with the world.
It's so true. It's 1,000% correct.
And we all have valuable stuff to offer the world. Maybe your parents don't see what you have is valuable, and maybe nobody around you right now sees what you have to offer as valuable, but somebody in the world will be helped by your knowledge or your wisdom or what you have to offer the world. And it's just a matter of getting out there and sharing yourself with the world.
Definitely. Yeah. So let's kind of retrace our steps a little bit. Well, for one thing, there's a lot of similarity that I'm seeing, as I've been podcasting for over a year, Rebecca. There's a lot of similarities that I'm noticing amongst the blindness community all over the world. Really, I've talked to people on almost all of the continents, and they all say many of the same things. Um, about society not really having the right expectations, and then basically the successful blind people like us needing to just overcome and, as you say, figure out what you're good at and make that your dream, make that your goals in life, know what you're
Mhm.
supposed to be doing in life. That's really what this is about. And I've heard this story in so many different ways. In my case, I was born in 91, so I'm 29 years old. And I was born blind, so I never had to make this adjustment. And I tell people, and I will tell you, Rebecca, I understand everything you're saying on one hand. Yet philosophically, I cannot possibly imagine what it would be like to be a sighted person because I was never sighted. And then because of that, I can never imagine what it must be like to lose your vision at 12 years old. I'm not going to say there's any good age to become blind, but that 12 years old, I mean, that's an age of transition. In my state, wherever I'm from in the States, it's the age where people are kind of getting into middle school, secondary school. You're starting to think that you're a little bit more mature. You're getting more mature. You're seeing more things. That's an incredibly poor time in anyone's life to lose their vision and have to make more transitions. So that's really incredible. Do you explain in your book, in the first book, because you're blind? Do you explain, the traumatic brain injury? I'm just curious about it.
Oh, so you haven't read my first book because
I
you're blind?
I have not. No, not
I, I
yet.
I took pains in my first book to describe in great detail some of the odd things I was experiencing due to the brain injury. Um, you know what I mean? And I also talk in the book about the different stuff my vision was doing. You know what I mean?
Well,
So,
well, okay. I kind of do. Would you like? I mean, would you like to summarize some of the key points that you made? Would you like to kind of explain it? Some of our viewers may or may not ever buy the book, so I kind of want them to get a taste. If you want to give them a taste of some of the things that you went through,
um,
if
so
you want.
I'm going to talk more about some of the brain injury things that I dealt with because to me they were so much more profound than the vision loss things. You know
Right,
what I
right.
mean?
Yes, yes. That's what I meant. I was
Yeah.
asking, coming up to ask that.
So
So if as we say, if obviously,
so
if you don't mind me asking,
right.
how did you get this
So
brain injury?
so I got the brain injury because there was a brain tumor that was on my growing in my brain when I was a child.
Oh Lord.
And it grew for many years, and I was having headaches for almost 3 years, and my mom was taking me to a doctor, but before it was finally discovered and removed. And but that's what caused the blindness and the brain injury. And the doctor that misdiagnosed it did a spinal tap on me right at the end when the pressure was really high because the tumor had grown so large. And that spinal tap caused, the pressure in the brain to skyrocket. And that's what caused my brain to herniate. And I died in the ambulance. And like, I also wound up, my understanding is the paralysis also came from the pressure from the spinal tap that doctor did. So anyway, my situation was just so much more devastated by the medical malpractice of that doctor, And I mean, all this happened back in 1989, you know what I mean? And back then, we didn't have the same medical care that we have today.
Right. Sure. Sure. I'm very sorry about that. Yeah, that's horrific for anyone, especially a child. That's absolutely horrific. Yeah. Okay. So then you became blind,
Mhm,
unfortunately.
mhm.
Um, so okay. Moving forward, something that I'm sure when I read the book, I'm hoping I probably will take a look. I'm hoping I'll probably I'm hoping I'll probably read it. Something I hope you explain is, so then can you explain this whole guardianship thing and how you kind of got into this pickle in the first place when you were in your 20s?
Well, so let me tell you some of the brain injury stuff I suffered.
Sure,
So
sure.
so I was suffering insomnia really bad, right? Like as from the time they brought me home from the hospital, like right away, every night I was having really bad insomnia. Like I was really tired when I go to bed, right? And I'd fall asleep right almost immediately. And I was listening to Talking Book Machine tapes back then. So I'd put
Hmm.
a tape in, I'd push play, and I'd lay down and shut my eyes. And I would go to sleep like literally within 15 minutes, I was sound asleep. But then I would wake up a little while later and I would be awake for hours and I couldn't get back to sleep. And this went on all the time, right? And like I would be up, like we had cats. My parents had cats back then. You know how cats are
Aw.
nocturnal. So like I would spend the night goofing around with the cats, right? But like because my brain wouldn't slow down at night so I could sleep. So I was up all night. And I was having just a whole lot of things, but that insomnia was the worst, because I couldn't sleep at night and then I was tired during the day and my parents were making me go to school back then. I mean, it was really hard. And I the whole situation was bad. Just put it that way. Um,
Okay.
I had very little. I had poor medical care. I had parents who were uneducated, and who, even though they were trying to do their best, they really didn't know what they were doing. And I was a severely injured child who wasn't really getting what I needed. And I mean, it was just by my own grit and determination that I survived it.
So then we move into your 20s, where you become an adult at 18, and then you get into this. Sounds like you get into some sort of a legal situation where you're placed under guardianship, as you call it. What's
Yeah.
that for listeners that might not be aware? I can imagine what it is, but for the listeners that may not know, what is it?
What is a guardianship?
Yes,
Is
you
that what
said that
you're
you.
asking? Oh, Aaron. What is a guardianship? A guardianship is a legal trap that lawyers use to steal the property and civil rights from people.
Right.
So, and these are they're these legal traps that family members don't realize that these lawyers use to steal the property from their loved ones when they let these lawyers lock them down under these guardianships. And so for many years I had this corrupt guardian over me who was stealing my property and who was abusing me behind the scenes, and I had no advocates.
So okay, so I mean, I understood what it was the entire time. Just to clarify it, we just need to explain for the listeners that may or may not have ever heard of this. So you're saying you had this, as you call it, this corrupt guardian who was behind the scenes. So is the corrupt guardian, in other words, your own parents, or?
No, the corrupt guardian was a lawyer who was best friends with my mother.
Ah, okay, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that sounds very, yeah, that definitely sounds fishy. Um, so what was the motivation for your parents, especially your mother, to agree with this lawyer to get into this mess, this lockdown situation?
Aaron, if I knew the answer to that question, I would relieve myself of a great deal of worry over all these years. You know, I don't know what caused my mother to agree to go along with the plans of those lawyers. You know what I mean? I I have, all I can say is my parents are uneducated people.
Okay.
I have four parents, a biological mother and father, and then a stepmother and a stepfather. And only two of my parents have high school diplomas. Do you know what I mean? And none of them have college educations. And these four people were duped by a bunch of greedy lawyers into basically selling their daughter. And
Huh.
it was just a bad scene. And then for 15 years, I was taken advantage of by a bunch of greedy lawyers in the state of Montana. And it it was really a bad situation. And that's why I fought for so many years to get out of it. And that's why I have been fighting every day since I finally got free of them in January of 2012 to right what happened. And you know, the first thing I did when I got out of court in January 2012 was I went and wrote my book about what had happened, and I published it. And I told God in my heart, I said, God, if you ever want me to do anything big with this, you're going to have to make it happen. And then I went on with my life. And a few years later, I met Gino, the man who's helping me make a movie based on that first book. But before I met Gino, I had already started my second book, which I just published in November, and I've been writing two more books since I finished that manuscript in August. I since have become an author, life coach, and motivational speaker, just because of everything I've been through.
So good. So good. Yeah, well, I mean, your story, really, Becca, the thing that concerns me the most philosophically about all of this, as I said earlier, I've been having a lot of these similar conversations with other blind people around the world and around our own country, around our
Mm-hmm.
own region, our neighborhood. And I have a very concerning question. Now, having nothing to just stepping away from you and me for a moment,
Mm-hmm.
can you tell us, because you're an expert in this field and I'm not an expert, so I'm asking you, how
Okay.
many other blind people have been taken advantage of and have gotten into these guardianship disasters, and how many other blind people have been taken advantage of by, as you say, greedy, corrupt lawyers? I'm
Oh,
asking because my greatest fear is
I
that
can answer
I
your
I
question.
don't think I hate to tell you, I do not think you are the first person who something like this has happened to. I'm sorry to say that, but I think
Okay.
this
Can
has
I
happened
address your
before. Sure,
question?
sure. Yeah, sure.
So let me tell you, Aaron,
Yes.
when I when I first realized that I was in a really bad legal situation and that I was going to have to work really hard to try to figure out how to get out of it, it was a really huge burden on my shoulders. But I went on with life, and it was really crazy. Over the years, as I went through and I started the process of fighting the guardianship, you know, I went to court in 2004 and lost the first time I tried to defeat the guardianship. And then I spent 8 more years in court before I finally defeated it in 2012. So there were a lot of years of fighting and a lot of losses and a lot of wins, but a lot of losses too before I finally kicked its ass in 2012. And during all of that time, um, I was just looking forward to the day when I would finally be free of it, but I didn't know I didn't know if I would even be able to go on after that point, because when I finally walked out of court, Erin, a free woman, it was really scary. Do you realize I had never spent a day in my life as a free person with all my civil rights intact? Because, like, I was blinded at the age of 12, right? And then I was denied treatment for my brain injury. So the day I turned 18, I didn't have all the faculties that a normal adult has at the age of 18. And then 2 years later, they locked me down under a guardianship. And then they suddenly give me the training to help my brain recover. So I'm going through this training and my brain's recovering, and they're teaching me how to use a cane, and they're teaching me how to start doing stuff as a blind person, at least somewhat. I mean, I didn't get the non-visual training I got at the training center I went 2 years later, but I did get a little bit of training to do stuff safely around my house, like cook and clean. And like I said, I did learn how to use a cane, but the fact that they denied me all of that for so many years, and then they locked me down under guardianship and took all my rights away, and then they gave me the training, and then for years they observed me and treated me like a lab rat and documented everything I was doing while I was living my life. It was really ridiculous, And for a young woman who already had gone through all this stuff that, teenagers normally have a lot of self-esteem issues and things they're trying to figure out about themselves in life already, right? But my teenage years were really effed up because of everything I was dealing with. Then I become a young adult, and at the age of 20, my parents decided to lock me down under a guardianship for 15 years. And then for 15 years, I'm told how I'm supposed to think and what I'm supposed to do. And I'm not allowed to even think or dream of my own decisions in life. So when I finally dissolved all of that in 2012, I found myself living in a house in a city that I had never wanted to live in. And so it was really weird trying to figure out what I wanted my life to be at that point, right?
Sure. It does. It does. Yeah, it's all I believe you, and it's very concerning and very bizarre, the entire thing. And yeah, and I yes.
And I remember during those years while I was locked down under that guardianship, I would meet people and they would say to me, they'd say, "Why are you locked down under guardianship? You don't seem like you need a guardianship." And I would just look at them, I would say, "I don't know," because all those years I was trying to figure out how to get out of that guardianship. And I was constantly in the back of my mind working through it and watching everything and listening to everything that was being said by these people that were stealing my liberties from me, waiting for my opportunity, watching for an opportunity to turn the tables on them, right? So I could escape from them. And I finally had my chance. And that's why I wrote my book. But see, over the years, I've met so many other people just by happenstance who are also locked down under guardianships. And you know what? Most of them aren't even blind, Alan or Erin. Most of them just have had different things happen in their lives. Like some of them are elderly. Some of them are in wheelchairs. Some of them have had a stroke. Some of them have this, that, or the other, happen. Some of them were just orphans, and they wound up locked down under a guardianship. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's so unfair. And somebody has to free all these people, because these guardianships, they're set up for like illegitimate reasons, and they're corrupt. And once they lock you down under them, it's like you have to fight tooth and nail to get out of them. They don't have to have much evidence to lock you down, but you have to have all kinds of evidence to get free of them.
So, and what did you have to do to legally dissolve this guardianship in 2012? What did you need to prove?
Well, like I said, it didn't start I didn't just fight in 2012. I fought for over 8 years.
Sure. Understood. Yeah. Right.
But what I ultimately did in 2012 was I had a neuropsychologist do a full neuropsychological evaluation of me and find that I was competent to handle my own affairs. And that's what I did in 2012. But I did the exact same thing in 2004. The only difference was in 2012, I no longer had my 4 parents and their greedy lawyers opposing me.
Hmm.
I was the same person in 2012 that I was in 2004. I was not incapacitated. I was not what they were claiming I was. The only difference, like I said, is what I didn't, the same greedy lawyers weren't involved in 2012 that were there in 2004.
Wow. Yeah. Um, this is a really important topic in the blindness community. So, all right. Well, of
Now,
course.
now,
Yeah, yeah,
Aaron,
yeah,
I,
just
I
go,
want
go, go
I
ahead.
want
Go
to
ahead.
address something else.
Sure,
So,
sure.
for if any of your viewers are dealing with a guardianship, because listen, there are people. There's a famous girl right now, in fact, who is locked down under a guardianship, and I feel really bad for her because I watched some videos about her, and when people ask her about her guardianship, she gives them the same kind of answers I used to give people. She just doesn't know. She doesn't know how she got in this guardianship. She doesn't know how to get out of it. And it's so overwhelming, she doesn't know where to start. So I just want your viewers to know that if you're locked down under a guardianship, this is how I got out of my guardianship. I stood on my constitutional rights because the Bill of Rights opens up with the preamble says something like all men are endowed with their creator by their creator with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when I first read those words, when I read the preamble of the Constitution, that was when it was like a lightning bolt hitting me in the head. That's when I realized that was how I was going to defeat that guardianship. I was just going to have to go to court and tell a judge they were violating my constitutional rights. And it was true because then I read the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Third Amendment. As I was reading down all those amendments, I was seeing flashbacks through my mind of different times during that 15 years of that guardianship when every one of those constitutional rights of mine had been violated through different things that had been done to me through that guardianship. And that's how I know those things are unconstitutional.
I agree. Yeah.
And so when I read the Constitution in 2004, that was when I realized that was my key to defeating that thing. But it took so much out of me to get to court in 2004. And then my mother testified against me in court in 2004. And my other three spineless parents wouldn't stand up for me. And I had all these lawyers fighting me. And I had to pay not only my lawyers to fight my parents and their lawyers, but I had to pay my mother's lawyers and the bank's lawyers to fight me. After all of that, I was so beaten up and bruised and just bloodied and felt so hopeless in 2004. It was another 8 years before I went back and tried again, but I finally won in 2012 when I went back. But like I said, it was just standing on my constitutional rights that did it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's all really important because I'm concerned I am concerned that other blind people, not just you, but I am concerned that other blind people were or are being taken advantage of by these types of things, these types of constitutional issues. And I'm suspicious that it is happening, right under our noses a lot more than certainly I'm even aware. So I tremendously thank you for bringing it to my attention, to our attention here on this show, and hopefully, my hope is a bit optimistic, I know, but I hope that people will educate themselves about this and be aware of this issue. And so, one more
Well,
question. So then, how did you find out that you were under this guardianship? Did your parents just tell you, like, point blank, you're under a guardianship? Or
they drug me into court late at night for an emergency court hearing. And my
late
mother
at
called.
night? Did
Yes,
you write this in your book? I certainly hope you wrote this down.
it's all in my book. You know, your viewers should read. My first book is called Because You're Blind by Rebecca Meadows. My second book is called Changing My Perspective by Rebecca Meadows. And I'm writing two more books. I'm not sure what I'm going to call
Yeah.
these other books.
Let me get through the first two. I'm determined to educate myself about it. So okay, absolutely. I'm gonna get those on Audible, of course, for sure. Cool. Okay. and highly, highly disturbing and incredibly interesting at the same time. So, 2012. Okay, you're a free woman. Now what? Moving forward, how did you
That,
get into
how did I get into what?
Blue Butterfly Enterprises, and how did you, basically get into the art of YouTube podcasting?
Okay,
How'd you
so
get the show?
you want me to start at your first question?
Yes,
So in
any.
2000, so in 2012, I walked out of court a free woman, right? But I was living in Missoula, Montana, in a house that I'd been forced to purchase, and I didn't want to live in Missoula, Montana. And so, and I also didn't have, like, I couldn't read Braille at that point. My computer skills were really bad because I didn't know how to use JAWS or any like talking programs, right? And so, and I had never been allowed to go to college or anything after high school. I mean, the little bit of education I got after high school was just stuff I'd sought out on myself and tried to teach myself, right? So the day I got out of court, I had to figure out how to put my life together the way I wanted, right? Like I said, I was brought to Missoula, Montana against my will and locked down there for 15 years under that guardianship. But that wasn't necessarily where I wanted to be, right? So first thing I did was I went to Minneapolis, Minnesota to take some blind immersion training. And then when I got done with that, I bought a house in Mesa, Arizona, because I didn't want to go back to the cold climate in Montana. So I've been here in Arizona ever since. So.
Oh, wonderful. So good. Yeah,
And,
I've
and
always
I
thought.
and then, like I said, and then I wanted opening my company a year or so ago. So.
Okay. All right. Yeah, well, I've always thought that Arizona seems nice. Wherever I am in the country, my location is of course undisclosed. Um, uh, because I have a stalker. In all honesty, it is a serious
Mm-hmm.
thing and a real thing. Anyway, I've always thought that Arizona is a very nice place. Seems like a beautiful place out there in the desert. So yeah, what do you think of Arizona as like overall as a place to live for blind people?
Oh, I feel like I died and went to heaven when I moved here, Aaron. Because, like, as a blind person, I've never had such a good life. I also have horrible pain because I've been in 4 car accidents, and not to mention the
Good
damage.
heavens! Good
Not
heavens! Oh my gosh!
and not to mention, the damage from what happened when I was a kid. Because I wasn't allowed to use a cane as a teenager.
Yeah.
Like, I was falling down a lot and getting hurt, and my parents were sending me to like summer camp without a cane, so I was literally like getting hurt a lot in really bad situations. So I have a lot of injuries to my body, and so, like, being here in Arizona where it's so much warmer than it was up in like Minnesota and Montana where I used to live, I just feel so much better.
Well, good. Excellent. Okay. So next, how did you come up with Blue Butterfly Enterprises, and what is that all about?
Well, maybe I shouldn't tell you. Maybe I should make your viewers buy my book, Changing My Perspective, to find out, because I talk about it in there.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Well,
Um,
yeah, I just suggest your viewers buy my book because it's one of the many things I talk about in there.
and that's the second one.
Yep,
The
Changing My Perspective.
Changing My Perspective, which so
Mhm.
first is because you're
Because
blind.
because you're blind, and then Changing My Perspective.
Right. Excellent. Okay. So, do you want to tell us a little bit more about, I mean, I mean, I know you want people to read the book,
Well,
but do you want to tell us more about some of the projects that you do want to tell us about, like your
well, so
YouTube and some things?
so so you know, my book, writing my first book, Because You're Blind, is just where all of this started. Like I said, I've got other books that I've written, and we're making a movie based on my first book. And my YouTube channel is called Becca's World. And I strongly encourage your viewers to go check it out and watch my videos and let me know what you guys think. I have, I think, about 200 videos on there. Um, and I'm doing several new videos each week I'm putting up there. So, there's a lot to look at and a lot to comment on and a lot of ways to interact with Becca's World. Initially, we were, well, we've done videos several different ways over time, but we recently started this new format that we're using at least once a week right now, where we go live and our viewers are able to interact with us while we're taping the show, and they're able to ask questions of me and the other panelists and interact with us in real time, and we're really enjoying it. And because we're doing that kind of randomly, the only way to really participate is to go on Becca's World and become a subscriber and a viewer, so you get notified when we're going to be live. Anyway, and so that's one way in which we've been doing videos, and we do videos like this way too over Zoom, the way you're doing it right now. But before the pandemic, we were actually doing videos in person. So.
Right, where people would come to your studio and you would sit down with
Right,
them.
or we go to them too. You know what we were gonna do last year at the NFB convention, the one that got canceled for the quarantine? We were actually going to be flying to Houston, and we were going to rent a room. I actually had a room rented, and we were going to be doing interviews with people at the convention. We were taking reservations from people, and we were going to have them come in, and we were going to do taped interviews with people to upload to Becca's World. And I plan on doing that whenever we have another in-person NFB convention. I still plan.
That's a great idea. That's
Oh
excellent.
yeah, because I've been doing all these VIP videos and these longer form interview videos with people and getting all their great expertise and knowledge. But at these NFB conventions, there's like thousands of people. So yeah, it's such a great opportunity to meet a whole bunch of people all at once. That's what we were going to do last year. But like I said, we'll do it whenever the NFB does their next in-person convention again.
Right. Right. Well, I think that's really important. And that these NFB conventions, you can interview people from overseas. I mean, you could really spread
Mhm.
your channel. You could really globalize your whole channel um,
Oh,
easily. It's interesting. Most of the people on this channel here on the YouTube side, most are from outside of the United States.
mhm.
However, on the audio side, on the iTunes side, most are from the United States. So it's a very interesting mix of people who,
Actually, I follow a lot of YouTubers who are based here in the United States.
right.
I don't know who their audiences are, and I really don't know who most of my audience is. I mean, I know at one time I was getting notifications all the time from YouTube. So and so has subscribed to you on YouTube, but I don't know what happened to those, or maybe I just haven't had time to really look at them in a while. But I know that I just really don't know who my subscribers are. You know, I think they remain somewhat anonymous.
To a degree, to a degree, yes, yes. Um, well, one of the things that we talked about before, guys, and you remember when I was on Becca's World on the VIP tag on the VIP video, or at some point I mentioned that you should get into podcasting because it's really easy. And with Anchor, let's say, you can see all of the countries that tune into you. So if you're curious
So
about that, yes.
how do you take your YouTube feed and turn it into a podcast, and where do you upload it to?
Well, the podcast came first and then the YouTube. So
Oh,
this, of course, we're recording basically two tracks. We're recording M4A and we're
oh,
recording MP4, right?
okay.
M4A is what I take it and I basically share it into the Anchor app. So once you create a free account with Anchor, then you can just set up a Becca's World on Anchor, and then at any time you're on Zoom or recording, um, certainly anytime you're recording over Zoom, you can easily take the audio and just put it directly into Anchor, and then they send it out. And then the same with MP4. I pull the audio, I pull the MP4 out, and then push it into YouTube, and then do the two things at the same time. So that's, and then in all of my YouTube videos, most of them, if you go to the comments, you can see how I include the anchor link, so that, if you're at home and you're blind or sighted and you just don't want to watch, then I still include the audio as in the podcast. So either way, I believe in the distribution of knowledge and the distribution of content in every form, to you, to
Oh,
everybody. Yeah.
yeah, I understand. And so Aaron, would you
Yeah.
be able to send me an email or email me a copy of this video so I could share it on my channel too?
Sure. I can. Well, I can certainly send you the video after I publish it. Is that what
Yeah,
you mean?
right, right. So I can see it.
Yeah. I can send. Yeah, after I publish it on YouTube, I can certainly send you back
Okay.
the final. Of course, I will. Yeah, I would always do that.
Okay.
But of course, I always love having every guest, talking about the most important issues to them. So, what are some other really important issues just going on in society, going on in your life, going on in Becca's world that you just want to get off your chest?
So this lockdown we just came out of, and this
Yeah.
one that we're going to be going back under, Aaron, these greatly concern me because these are exactly like the guardianship I was locked under. They are violating our constitutional rights by these lockdowns. And it infuriates me that I fought for 15 years to get free from that guardianship. And now because of these stupid these stupid governors and mayors who are choosing to violate our constitutional rights, I'm in danger of losing my rights all over again, along with the rest of us.
I encourage you to reach out to whoever your elected official is there in Arizona, in the Arizona House of Delegates, Arizona State Senate. And my advice is go talk to, try to arrange a meeting with that person and explain your concerns.
I wonder, I might have to think about that.
That's what I would do. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, that's my advice to you, Becca. Go arrange a meeting with your state
I like
delegate.
that idea, Aaron. I'll have to do that.
And don't forget, on your way out, when you're in their office, don't forget to slip them a copy of your book and
Oh,
say
yeah.
you may want to educate yourself about this issue, because
Because I
in
lived
my
it.
opinion, what the laws that you are passing here in Tucson, I believe, are exactly the laws that we do not need, and that exactly the laws that violate the constitutional rights of blind people and anyone else. If that is, your I guess, your thesis, your argument that you're presenting. I've
Right.
talked to my representatives before. Yes.
Yeah. What did you say about Tucson?
Yeah, I think, yeah, Tucson. That's where the state house would be in Arizona, right?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not even sure. I don't. Is Tucson the county of Arizona? Maybe it is.
Wait, the capital? I thought it was.
I
I,
thought Phoenix was. I thought Phoenix was the capital. So, but maybe I'm wrong.
no, it's either,
But
no, I think, well,
anyway,
okay,
I'm
either way.
sure I can figure out where it's at. But
Yeah. So either way, where I'm not sure myself. Either
mm,
way, either way, you would go to the state house of Arizona and you would have
yeah,
a meeting with your representative and
yeah,
saying, look,
you're right.
I'm your constituent. Here are my concerns. You really should listen to me, or else you might lose my vote the next time I go and vote. And I hope that you vote
They'll
every.
lose a lot more than my vote. I'm a YouTuber
Well, there
and an
you go.
author
Well, there
and
you
a
go.
and a motivational speaker and a life coach. So
Well, there you go. So it sounds like, if I was an elected official, it sounds like that someone like you, Rebecca Meadows, would be the person that I would want in my office, educating me about these issues so that I can make sure to pass the best laws for everyone, for blind
yeah.
people and everyone else. And I really mean that from the bottom of my heart.
Well,
It,
yeah, and Aaron, like I said, these guardianships, most of the people, like I said, I met people, lots of people just by pure happenstance who are locked down under these guardianships, and most of them aren't even blind. Lots of people wind up locked down under these guardianships. just because something happens in their life. Like I said, people who are adopted as children, they turn 18, and as they're turning 18, somebody locks them down under a guardianship, right, to take their rights away. This stuff happens all the time. Or if you're a child and someone leaves you a great deal of money, someone else will come along and lock you down under a guardianship to take advantage of you. I mean, this stuff is just, it's wrong and it needs to stop.
Yeah, it needs to stop. I agree. I really like the way that sounded. It needs to stop. I really liked that. So of course, you guys, Becca has interviewed me, but of course, every guest has basically the same opportunities on this show as I give the entire world. So I'm out of questions. I'm certainly going to look into these books. But of course, it wouldn't be an episode of Aaron's Opinion without me asking you. So, Rebecca Meadows, if you could ask me only one question to really make me sweat, to really see how much salt I'm worth, what question would you ask?
Have you written any books, Aaron?
Nope. Should I?
Yes.
Oh, cool. What's it called?
I believe everybody has a book inside of them, something that they're supposed to share with the world. So what is it inside of you, Aaron, that you're meant to share with the world?
I don't know yet. But of course, as our great friend Samuel Clemens would have said, and as I'm sure he would have said to you if you had gone back in time, Rebecca, there are only two important days in your life, the day you're born and the day you know why. So it's up to us to know why. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I know why I was born. Do you know why you were born, Aaron?
I don't, but I hope it's because I'm supposed to educate people and help people. It's
well, in my reason. Book, Changing My Perspective, I talk about how I discovered why I was born.
Well, gee, I'm gonna have to give that. And you are good at promoting your book on Amazon. Okay, you are really good at that. You really know how to promote a book. I guess if I write one, I should have you promoting it. I guess, right? Is that how this works?
Sure. No. I'm not going to volunteer to promote other people's books. I'm not going to volunteer.
I see. Well, that was tremendously good as always. So do you have any words of wisdom that you want to say before you leave us? Because I think it's about sums it up.
Yeah, I do. If you're struggling with something in your life and somebody is telling you that you won't be able to achieve it for any reason under the sun, don't believe them. You can achieve literally whatever you set your mind to. If you can see it in your mind, you can achieve it. That's it.
That's good. And of course, on a much lighter note, this was certainly a heavy episode. On a much lighter note, so if someone wants to get in touch with you personally, how do they do it?
They can check out Becca's World on YouTube, or they can email me at info@bluebutterflyenterprises.com.
Fantastic. For comments about this episode, as I say, you can email me at aaronsopinion6@gmail.com. Text message, you can text, call, or leave a voicemail 1-240-681-9869. Don't forget, follow on Facebook, Twitter, comment below on YouTube, even consider becoming a patron on my Patreon page. We'd appreciate the support. Becca, I wish you the very best of health. To everybody else, I wish you the best of health. Take care, everybody. And as a matter of fact, well, I forget it. You know what? I forget if this was my first recording of I believe this was my first recording of 2021. So we're going to keep recording and have a great 2021. As I say on this podcast, thanks so much, everybody. And my motto here, help one person today, help a million people tomorrow.